Welcome everyone, I'm Bryn Brown. So today is all about manifestors, and I want to talk to you about what it means to be a manifestor, some of the challenges, some of the gifts of being a manifestor, how that shows up in work and life and parenting and relationships, and what it means to actually live your strategy as a manifestor. Manifestors are near and dear to my heart. I love you guys. I think there's something incredible about manifestors. My husband's a manifestor. My sister, who I'm very close with, is a manifestor. So I've seen sort of the entire, male versus female, the way that that plays out in terms of conditioning. And I've seen, just a lot of different aspects of being a manifestor and the way that it shows up in the world. So let's get into it all. So first and foremost, manifestors are about 9% of the population. It's one of the more rare types, actually. And manifestors are, I'm going to share my screen with you so you can take a look at this chart with me. So manifestors have a unique configuration in their chart. First of all, if you haven't run your chart before, you can go to a website like geneticmatrix.com or mybodygraph.com. Those are two really great ones. Genetic Matrix might seem a little bit more overwhelming or complicated if you're brand new to this system. Mybodygraph.com is a really user-friendly, beginner-friendly system. So that's usually where I send my clients to run their charts. But either of those is fine. And truly most of the software out there is really great. So you can type in human design chart creator and get a free chart. What you will need to know is your birth time, your birth location, and obviously your birth date. If you don't know your birth time exactly, you can get a ballpark can be helpful. But if you know, oh, it was somewhere around 8 p.m., that can work for you. There may be some nuances or some slight changes depending on the time. And if you don't know it at all, we can try to run your chart using 12 noon. So that could be an option for you. But again, we have to have the understanding that may leave some variation in your chart. Okay, so manifestors, let's take a look at this chart. Now, this is what's called a body graph. So when you run your chart, this is what you're going to see, only it's going to be lit up in all these different places. So you might see different colors, or you might see places where it is not lit up, it's just white. And of course, then you're going to have lines connecting certain centers. So these are your centers. They may connect all the way, which is called a channel, or maybe they only go halfway, which is called a hanging gate. All these numbers are called gates. We don't want to concern ourselves with that too much for now. Here, what I want to show you are some of the hallmarks and how we know that you're a manifestor. The type is determined by which centers are defined and undefined. So for manifestor of note, this center right here, second from the bottom, this white square here, that's called the sacral center, and that is undefined. That'll be white. That will not be colored in for you. And the reason that's important to note is because the sacral center, manifestors, are non-sacral beings. Okay, so the only types that have the sacral center defined are generator types. So generators and manifesting generators. So they're the only ones that will have this defined. The other types, manifestors, projectors, reflectors, are considered non-sacral beings. We don't have that defined. Okay, so this is not going to be colored in for you. In the chart, we have these four centers here on the bottom, right? These four. So this is your sacral center, the will center, sometimes called the ego or heart center, the emotional solar plexus, and the root center. These four centers, bottom right, are energy centers. They sort of emit, when you have them defined, they emit energy. Okay. So the reason that this is important for manifestors is because you will have at least one, two, or three of these defined if you're a manifestor, but not the sacral center. And they will be connected to the throat somehow. So it could be that they're connected all the way looping around, but somehow there is a connection, a full channel that connects you to your throat. Now, why is that important? Okay, so in human design, there's kind of a joke, and it's a little bit like it's funny because it's true, that when you have a motor to the throat, you win the game, right? How do you get a motor to the throat? You win the game. You are a manifestor or a manifesting generator, right? So you have this element of being a manifestor. Above all of all the types, manifestors are the most readily available types in terms of manifesting. How do I want to say this? They have manifestors. You have the power to manifest on demand. So the gist of being a manifestor is it's very powerful. Now, that doesn't mean that the other types don't have power or aren't as powerful as you. It just works in a little bit of a different way. So you have a motor to the throat, and that's powerful. What does that do? Well, the throat center actually is for communication and manifestation. So when you have a motorized throat, meaning one of those centers is connected to the throat, then you have this ability to sort of speak what you want into reality. So that's a huge advantage for manifestors. Manifestors, you also are the only type, again, this is a fairly rare type, only about 9% of the population. You're the only type that doesn't have to wait for anything. So we're going to dig into that a little bit more. What this offers you is, this is related to your strategy, first of all. So your strategy is to inform. You don't have to wait. So a generator needs to wait to respond. A projector needs to wait for an invitation and recognition. A reflector needs to wait a lunar cycle. Manifestors can initiate, and that's really incredible. It creates this sense of self-sufficiency and independence. And because of that, manifestors don't really need other people in the same way that other types interact and utilize relationships and need people. Now, we're all humans. Outside of human design, we're all humans. We are collective tribal creatures by nature, right? So on some level, we all need other people. Manifestors just operate a little bit differently. One of the things that I've noticed about this sense of independence is that manifestors can initiate things, and that leaves them vulnerable to conditioning in a lot of ways. So I want to talk a little bit about what the experience might be like for someone who is a manifestor growing up, and what it might be like as a parent who is a manifestor, just for a few minutes. So first and foremost, manifestors are here to impact, all right? They're here to impact. You are here to impact the world in some way, in your own unique way. So you're here to have an impact. And because of that, your energetics work appropriately. Now, oftentimes it's said that the manifestors have a repelling aura. Now, I say that with a little bit of hesitation because I know that it can come across negatively, and I don't want you to feel disempowered by that. It's actually really beautifully designed for you to have a repelling aura. What that means is that your energy is powerful. You're designed to impact, so all of your energy is moving outward. Now, if we think about a generator, for example, generators are here to respond. So they have this open and enveloping aura that allows for relationships because they need to be relational beings. They need to respond to things. So they're able to absorb and to receive very easily. By contrast, a manifestor, you're impacting the field at all times with your energy. And so that can feel a bit repelling. Now, there's a couple reasons why that works to your advantage. Primarily, it works to your advantage because manifestors have a non-verbal communication style, okay? Meaning that you really have this ability to take inspiration and ideas. You sort of like go within and you have all of this creativity, and you're designed to put that into action and then again, impact the field. So because it's nonverbal, it can be challenging a little bit to articulate exactly what you're thinking or what that creative process looks like. And it's also challenging for you to be interrupted. Right? So if you're interrupted and you're in the thought stream or you're doing something, I think about this often. My husband, who's a manifestor, when he's texting or emailing, you can't talk to him. He can't hear anything else. And if you interrupt him, it's really challenging for him to sort of switch back and forth between different tasks, right? Because there is a nonverbal creative flow, and that verbal interruption is very difficult for him to experience. So me knowing that, it allows me to have some compassion and to have greater patience when he's doing something, that it's not personal, that he's not listening to me, but rather that's just the way that he operates. Okay, so this repelling aura is designed to keep people out of your space so that you can stay in your creative flow and take action and have the impact necessary. So the necessary in terms of what you're meant to do, right? So that repelling aura sort of protects you and buffers you in a way. And sometimes people feel that and they don't necessarily want to be impacted. So that's where that repelling, that nature comes in, right? People sometimes can be a little put off. And I bring that to your attention, not to be negative about it, but just to have some awareness, create that awareness around the way that your energetics actually work so that we're not in self-judgment about that. It's not a bad thing. It's literally how you're designed, and you're designed that way for a reason. Okay, and we're going to get into the strategy of informing, but I really want to highlight how important it is for you to understand that you are here to impact. All right. In terms of, I'm thinking who's like a famous manifestor, the founder of this system who received this information, Ra Uru Hu, and he brought it to the masses. He is a manifestor. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it. It's not about being warm and fuzzy, if you know anything about him. It's simply about impacting the field and bringing something to humanity, to the tribe, to the collective, right? So that they can then take it and run with it. And typically the way that works in this system is that would then be for the generators to inspire, to light that fire, to give something for a generator to respond to, and then they build it. And so for that reason, manifestors are really here to be the initiators. You're not necessarily designed to finish things, right? You're here to start things. Now, does that mean that you're not capable of finishing things? No, not at all, right? And there can be other chart elements that help you to do that. But what I want you to understand is you're really here to initiate things. So what that looks like in life is oftentimes leadership. Okay, so it's leadership. It's sort of collecting your group of people and being a leader and really directing people and then having them do the work so that things come to fruition, right? That's your way of impacting. They often call manifestors the generals. And that's because they are not really designed to have anyone tell them what to do. Right? You're not designed, you're self-sufficient and you're independent. You're not really designed to receive, right? That sort of directive. You're designed to take that inspiration and put it into action, right? And then again, it's like, I like to think of it as manifestors are the spark, and they spark something in other people. So again, can you see something through to the end? Yes. How are you designed to do that? Typically in sort of a leadership capacity rather than someone who actually does the work. Okay, so that's really important. Now, part of the energetics of all of this, why are you designed to lead and not, or part of what goes into why you're designed to lead and not actually execute necessarily, is because you are a non-sacral being. Now, this is really important concept to understand. The sacral center, the one that I showed you, second from the bottom, that little square that you don't have defined as a manifestor, is where we get sustainable energy. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have energy because you don't have it defined. What it means is that you don't have sustainable energy. I like to say you have a smaller gas tank. I'm a projector. I get it. I have a smaller gas tank than people who have it defined, which are generators and manifesting generators. Now, the challenge with having an undefined sacral center is that sometimes it can be hard to know when to stop. Because it's undefined, you're always receiving that sacral energy from other people. So the way that we overcome that challenge is to make sure that we have plenty of time alone. So as a manifestor, it is really important that you are in your own energy from time to time so that you can rest and recharge and not be taking in that sacral energy and not be overworking. You do have motors, right? We talked about there's 4 motors, the sacral being one of them, and you can have 1, 2, or 3 of the other motors. Those are energy sort of inducing. There is an energetic element to it, but they are more of an on-off, rather like a pulsing, rather than that sustainable, consistent energy that the sacral offers. So you're not designed, again, to be executing necessarily because you don't have the energy for that. You need to rest a little bit more. And that doesn't mean that you can't be incredibly productive while you are working. But again, this burning the midnight oil, that concept, that's not for you. right? Again, it's spark, be the spark and ignite that in someone else and then lead other people. So oftentimes in work situations, we see leadership roles being really valuable and important. Leaders of community as well. Gloria Steinem was a manifestor, and you can see how leading a movement, right? Not necessarily going out there and doing all the grunt work. Yes, she worked. Yes, she worked. And it was more about inspiring other people to gain momentum in a movement for women's liberation. Okay, so just wanting to demonstrate some of the ways that this actually shows up in the real world. So non-sacral beings, that's really important. It is important that you get that time to rest and rejuvenate on your own. And manifestors might find, you might feel like being alone is actually something that really speaks to you, that really feels good and nourishing and recharging to you. Now, again, there can be other chart elements. If you're 2-line, I'm thinking of my sister who's a 2-4, and there's that hermit element. Yeah, that's going to roll into it. But again, you're not designed to bond and be in relationship with people in the same way that other types are. You're here to be that creative inspiration and to take that inspiration, put it into action and impact people. I hope this is making sense. So in thinking about sort of conditioning, when we look at the chart, anywhere that there are undefined centers or gates, we're receiving information. And that's where we're most likely to be conditioned, because where you're defined, you're putting out, right? You're putting out, you're emitting energy. So for example, as a manifestor, you have your throat defined. It's easier for people to hear you because you have that defined energy. And it can feel sometimes like you're just more empowered to speak or to be heard because you are a manifestor. Now, conditioning can happen whether you're defined or undefined. Okay. And I see that happen most frequently in gender roles in developed Western nations, right? In our society, gender roles can really influence that. I would say because of gender roles, it's arguably more challenging to be raised as a manifestor woman than it is to be a male manifestor, or that sort of, however you identify. So the more feminine versus masculine, but certainly male versus female, or male role versus female role is a little bit more challenging in our society, because there is this inherent, and it's changing generationally for sure, but there is this inherent sort of women should be a little bit more quiet, should follow the rules, whereas it's more socially acceptable for a man to be loud, to be opinionated, to take charge, to initiate, right? That's a more traditional masculine energy. And so I really love talking to manifestors about their energy specifically to help them heal around what it might have been like through childhood, to help them come into their power. And again, everyone has different experiences, so the male-female thing is not across the board. And then also as parents. So as a parent who is a manifestor, or if you're parenting a manifestor child. So let's just talk about those dynamics for a moment, and then we'll get into the strategy. So manifestors are not designed to be told what to do, right? You're the initiator. So as a child, that can be really challenging. It can be very challenging to parent a manifestor child because they're not designed to be parented almost, right? Like there's this sense of they just already have everything that they need. So there can be a lot of rebellion. And I'm kind of laughing to myself thinking about my sister and her growing up and what she was like as a child. There can be a lot of rebellion there because the more there is this attempt to parent or control or condition, right, consciously or unconsciously, the more the manifestor is going to want to rebel against that because it just isn't in your nature. It can also lead to conditioning, right? Around my mentor, Robin Wynn is her name. She talks about this in the sense of like a horse being broken. It's right. It's like breaking the spirit almost of, some children are actually put so in their place that they actually really dampen that natural ability to initiate and to impact. And they really hide that and they shrink within themselves. So if that was your experience, this is your invitation to begin to come out of that shell, to begin to unravel that conditioning. And if there is anything around your childhood where you felt the struggle of really trying to be autonomous and not feeling the need to be parented, and the tension with your parent, the understanding or the grace that's available here is, really around seeing that there are different types, and it's really, without this knowledge, it's no fault of anyone that they didn't know how to parent a manifestor. Okay, so I hope that offers some comfort, because it can be really challenging. The opportunity here, parenting a manifestor, is to really give them that freedom to make their choices and to initiate things and to follow their strategy, which is to inform. We're going to talk about that. So to inform. So it's sort of this concept of, as children, manifestors can tend to want to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Okay, so that can be something that you end up playing with, or that can be conditioned into you. The opportunity here is to teach manifestors how to properly inform along the way, so that they are really fully embodying the power that they have. And as a parent, again, I see male or father figures, right, that are manifestors having a different experience than female or mother figures having an experience as a manifestor, as a parent. So my husband, for example, is he's a manifestor. We have a daughter, and he is very loving, and he's very much a guide for her to be independent. And that works so well for a manifestor. It's like modeling for her how she can be more independent. Now, mothers that I meet that are manifestors aren't necessarily this stereotypical Mother Hubbard type, right? There's not the warm, fuzzy feeling necessarily there that you would have potentially with other types. Now, again, there's a lot of variables that go into here, nature versus nurture. There are other chart variables that can influence this. So I'm just speaking in overarching terms, but really understanding that as a parent, as a manifestor mother in particular, that there can be some self-judgment there around, I'm not as warm and fuzzy, or I'm not as affectionate maybe as I feel like I should be. And I want you to hear that that's not wrong. Okay. So you're a great mother, I'm sure, right? It is this, it's just a different way of interacting. And when you understand that your relationships operate in a little bit of a different capacity, there's often that teaching them to be more independent. And I know a mom who's a manifestor, she may be seeing this, and she's really invested in making sure that her children have a variety of experiences. So again, it's not about, oh, they're coddled and they're so held and it's so touchy-feely. She definitely needs her space, and she's providing her children a vast array of knowledge through experience, and that is so lovely and beautiful. So again, it's moving out of stereotypes, and this is what human design in general is so helpful with, is just moving away from stereotypes in general and really embodying the way that you operate and feeling empowered around that and using it to your advantage, right? And unraveling some of that conditioning like we spoke about. So there's a lot to go into here, and I hope this is all making sense for you as manifestors, and I hope that you're really feeling seen, because it is a unique energetic to have. You are fairly rare in terms of the general population. I want to make sure that I've got everything covered. Let me just glance at my notes here. Yeah, so a couple things that are coming to me as well are, I really want to make sure when it comes to work, whether you're employed or you're an entrepreneur, you need to own what you do. So again, you are this, it's almost like you're really designed to be a delegator, right? You spark, and then you get other people to build something for you. You really need to have ownership of it, because you're not great at being told what to do. For manifestors, you really want to have ownership of your work. So if you're employed, really being the head of the department or having the autonomy to be able to run your projects or your work the way that you see fit is really, really important for you. Obviously, if you're a business owner or entrepreneur, that comes with the territory. And then the caution there is, hey, are we working too much? Are you trying to execute too much of this? Can you delegate? My favorite phrase, my mantra, eliminate, automate, delegate. So true for manifestors, because you're not really designed to be doing all the actual hands-on work as much as possible. So let's talk about let's talk about the strategy for manifestors. So strategy is to inform. Okay. So when you are, before we get into that, I just want to touch on your not self theme. So your signature and not self. So this is how we know whether you're in flow. It's kind of a barometer of flow in a sense. So are you on purpose? Are you aligned with your energy? Are you out of alignment with your energy? Are you working against your strategy? So the signature is when we are most in flow, and that is a deep sense of peace. Okay. There's a deep inner sense of peace for manifestors when they are really on purpose, or they're not working against their energy. When we get out of flow, so when we're not following our strategy and we're not following our authority, and you are sort of just trying to show up, maybe like a different type, for example, trying to do too much, maybe you're overexerting that sacral center, anger is likely what you're going to experience. Now, most of the time when I say this, regardless of the type, when I explain these two, signature and not self-theme, to any type, they laugh because it sounds so familiar. For manifestors, it's not just anger coming up from within, right? So it can elicit anger when a manifestor is interrupted. Again, that nonverbal creative flow, when they're interrupted, it can make them angry. It can also, especially if you're not following your strategy, bring anger toward them. Right. So again, before I knew all of this, and in my relationship, before understanding that my husband was a manifestor, he would go off and do things. And he has sort of, again, nonverbal creative flow. He doesn't have a great grasp on time. Okay. So time can get away from him when he's in his creative flow. And I could get angry because you said it would take 30 minutes and now it's been 2 hours, and I'm angry and I'm bitter and I'm frustrated. Right. So it can come at you as a manifestor, or it can come from within you. So informing is going to be a very powerful strategy for you. And that is your strategy, is to inform. Now, informing is not about asking permission. Okay. Informing is not about getting people to buy into what you have going on. They may or they may not. Informing as a strategy for manifestors is really about you letting people know so they get out of your way. Okay. So that we can reduce the amount of anger that's either coming from interruptions, from that interrupted creative flow, or people aren't getting angry at, what situation has arisen. It's really common, for a manifestor to just kind of go off and do their thing, again, with that sort of sense of ask for permission rather than, or ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So they can just go off and go do their thing. And then everyone who needs to know sort of left in the dust. They're left wondering what's going on. So for a manifestor, the best strategy that you can have is to inform people who need to know, right? Who need to know along the way. So if you need to let your partner know, or you need to let, your team know, or you need to let your boss know what you're planning to do, it's simply an information piece. This is my plan, and I'm moving forward with it, just so you know, right? And here are all the details. That's why it gets really tricky. If you have a boss and you're a manifestor and they're telling you, no, I don't think so. No, you can't do that, right? That's where it gets, again, the anger is going to come up because you're not allowed to express yourself as your energetic is designed to. So it's really important that you're informing along the way and informing before you initiate. All right. So that's how that works. So again, it's not about asking for permission. It's not about getting their feedback, right? It's just about letting them know. I had one client who's a manifestor, and her partner, she would just simply say, hey, I'm going to Target. Let me know if you need anything. Right. And she would go, and it would be however long she wanted to go. And that would be it. But it would reduce the amount of questions that she was getting peppered with. Well, what are you getting? How long are you going to be gone? That could bring up a lot of anger in her. And so it was, and that's sort of a trivial example, but that's how it works, right? So, hey, I'm just going to let you know. And then she would just be off, and then she wouldn't have to worry about any repercussions. So that can be really, really valuable. I think that's all I have. The last thing that I'll say for any non-sacral type manifestors, right? You don't have a defined sacral center, that we really need to make sure that people around you are asking you open-ended questions. When you're asked yes or no questions, it's very easy to answer with a conditioned response. Okay. So the people pleasing comes out, or this is how I should be, or what I should say, or what I should think, right? When there's an open-ended question, hey, I'm wondering what you think about this, that makes it a lot easier. I know in our house, there used to be the bane of the existence. So again, the anger bouncing back and bitterness back and forth, right? Around, what do you want for dinner, kind of a thing, right? So the open-ended questions started becoming a little bit less, just so, let's see, how do I articulate this? It wasn't like, do you want this for dinner, right? That's a yes or no, because then we're going to get into people pleasing, but it became more about, hey, I'm wondering what you think if we have, Italian food or spaghetti for dinner tonight, right? And then it started softening that. Oh, I don't know. It just feels kind of heavy for me. Do we have any salad to go with it? So we might have a little bit more that comes with that to get to a decision in a faster way. Now, for manifestors, for all types, you're going to want to also listen to your authority. We don't really have time to get into that today. So that's for another training. If you're interested in learning more about human design, definitely register for the webinar that I'm running next Wednesday, a week from today. It'll be 2 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 4 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be covering, what does it mean to be sacral versus non-sacral? We're going to look at some of the different ways that energy moves through the body graph and through your chart so that we understand that in a deeper capacity. You're just going to get a bigger picture of the way human design operates. So I really encourage you, if you're intrigued by this at all, to join me for that. This is your invitation, your personal invitation to join me. The link to register is in the description here. Also, and I can pop it in the comments, or you can DM me if you're interested in a private reading. I do have some space in the coming next couple of weeks to do some private chart reading sessions where we can look at your business or your life, or sort of address some of the bigger questions that you have based on your chart, and you'll get a deeper understanding of that as well. So I hope this has been so enjoyable for you. Tomorrow is Thursday already. Don't know how that happened. Tomorrow is Thursday, and we're going to be talking about manifesting generators. So Manny Gens, you are up tomorrow. It's all about you. So we're going to take what we know about generators. We're going to take what we've learned about manifestors, and then we're going to talk about what it means to be a manifesting generator. Personally, I attract a lot of Manny Gens in my life. I have the vast majority, probably 70 to 75% of my client load is manifesting generators. So I know a lot about the way that you operate and how to actually apply this information to you, to your life, to your work, to your relationships, all of that. So I love you. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. And I will see you guys back here again very soon. Bye for now.